Rites of Ascension. By C.V. Brawny. Shade in the Tree of Life. Poster's note. I have noticed some of my videos now have ads. I have not monetized this channel. My thinking is the ads are for the site that this video is posted on. End poster's note. Shortly after a teleportation to the eastern half of Griffonia, Spike belched up a letter from Celestia that almost scorched the ceiling of the chariot. As it was several pages long, he had to reach for water after it was over. Twilight got out her own water as she sorted the pages to read. Cloud and Rainbow were pulling the chariot, so she made a mental note to update them later. Okay, let's see what Celestia has for us. Twilight. I apologize for how abrupt this mission is. You can rest first once you get to the Great Eyrie, should you deem it necessary. Diplomacy with dragons is harder than with any other nation, partly because of the nature of the Mountain Pact, partly because they aren't really a nation at all, and partly because their representative is the very definition of an old curmudgeon. In one of our weaker moments, Luna and I had his name put in dictionaries in the examples to make it literal. I spent 6 centuries apologizing to him for that. Twilight snickered and blushed from the strange looks from Trixie and Spike. Sorry, still reading. I'll explain in a moment. I want to warn you against copying my actions today when talking with other dragons, or even Volcanus himself. It can be very tricky knowing which track to take with them. On other days, I might have handled that very differently. Unlike most other bullies, he knows when he is being won. Like other bullies, though, he still crumbles when punched in the nose, whether that's figurative or not. I also want to clearly define the consequences of failure on this mission. Volcanus is often a blowhard, and his demand for a life in exchange for the loss of a dragon egg is unlikely to meet with much agreement even with other dragons. The real threat isn't from the pact. It's from what could theoretically be done with a dragon's egg. There are a number of dark possibilities that make me go numb. Normally, this isn't much of a worry, as no pony is usually dumb enough to steal one. Even if they survived the retribution from the dragons, every nation would treat them as a paramount threat. Yet here we are. It's an odd feeling I have about this situation. If the thief knows what they are doing, the theoretical devastation would be unmatched by anything you've encountered since Zebrica. Yet I remain unconvinced that our thief has that level of insight. My nephew just finished giving me an earful about not telling you of the anomalies in Griffonia. I disagree with him, although I understand his point. I wanted you to uncover them yourself to approach the problem with as open a mind as possible, as I have full faith in your abilities to handle them. I'm also not convinced that they are related to the problem at Hoof. This world is no stranger to such outbursts of magic, though it's been relatively calm for the last few hundred years. Be advised that if we are entering a more active period, we could begin to see more troublesome beasts such as the snow crabs. You have full permission to give such creatures the mercy of death, as they are almost always uncontrollable, violent, and beyond saving. For now, however, I must worry about what's happening to that poor unborn dragon. Note that it's entirely possible for the thief to go too far in using magic on the egg. This would result in the loss of the young life inside at a minimum, and could also result in leaving an area contaminated for centuries. It could also result in the egg hatching, much like with Spike. However, Spike was nearly done incubating when your magic finished the job, and we have no such indication that's the case here. Too much magic too fast would be like tossing a chicken egg into a fire to keep it warm, rather than using a hen or lamp. The results would be messy. I'm enclosing a letter with signatures of all the representatives of the pact, which should give you the ability to go anywhere in the world, even Griffonia, in search of your answers. You have my permission, and supposedly the support of the diplomatic corps of all these nations, to use force to gain entry to anywhere you are denied. I've also called in an extra favor to help you, though I don't know if it'll get there in time. One last thing. It's possible that, when you find the egg, it will be corrupted beyond saving. A corrupted dragon, even a newborn, is a threat to life all over Equestria. If this is the case, my orders are to destroy the egg rather than risk recovering it. Good luck. Celestia. Okay, that's some more info. Twilight yawned. We'll catch some sleep first, but we'll have to get going early in the morning. Before dawn, if possible. Trixie pulled a blanket from one of the storage cubbies in the chariot. Are we sleeping in here? I'm not sure how much I trust a hotel or griffin guest room. We'll be a guest of the king. She won't do anything untoward directly like that. At least, I doubt she would. It would mean open war between Equestria and her faction. If the Griffin nation was still united, we would be on much more even terms. But with half of her subjects on the side of Ragnar? That's not a war, that's a slaughter. Twilight. Rainbow's voice crackled over the radio. I know you've never seen the Great Eyrie before, so you might want to take a look. Twilight turned around and pulled open the armored shutter on the window as the others crowded around her. The Great Eyrie was smack in the middle of a massive, mountainous, alpine forest. Underneath the ground was a potent monochreny that bubbled up life-supporting magic, nourishing the trees to let them grow to obscene heights. The big granddaddy of them all was Yggdrasil, which was rooted directly above the crenny. At the size of a mountain, the mythical Yggdrasil held the Great Eyrie in much the same way Mount Canterlot held, Canterlot. The actual amount of walkable horizontal space was much smaller than in Equestria's capital, but it was much more spread out, making it look larger visually. From the outside, the leaves were dense enough to obscure much of the structures. What could be seen was the twinkle of lights throughout. The griffins weren't much for electricity, though there were some lines installed very carefully, by expert pony civil and electrical engineers. The griffins were, however, pretty good using the ambient magic for lighting using spells, runes, and simple artifacts. Parts of the trees themselves served as lighting, yet somehow Luna's dark and jeweled sky was as brilliant as though they were in the middle of nowhere. When they landed, it was at the Equestrian Embassy, which was the closest landing pad to the king's throne that could handle a chariot of the Catalfa's size. There were ponies waiting for them, and they quickly and quietly rushed her team into the Great Eyrie Palace. Unlike the marble and gold of Canterlot, almost everything in the Great Eyrie was wooden. There was some steel and fabric, but wood was the order of the day. Many of the pillars and molding had carvings that had to have taken untold years to complete. Some were random decorations, but many were pictographic stories or runic lists of names. A trio of griffins had joined them as guards and escorts, the leader of which expressed regret that the king was not in the city at the moment, and that they would be staying at a guest room modified for ponies. By the time they arrived on hoof rather than wing, Twilight had completed a nice, healthy list. Standing at the door to the guest room, Twilight quickly eyed the lead griffin up and down, then gave him the list she'd been working on. I'm going to need ready access to any government documents you have on these topics, as well as a list of griffins with very high proficiency in the same. We'll be getting started early, so I must insist that this be worked on immediately. The griffin took the list in his claws and nodded. I'll pass this on to a griffin that can help and make sure that the royal librarian is ready to assist you. I trust you can keep this quiet. Twilight thought back to the morning, which by her internal clock felt like months ago. Well, there's already been an explosion this mission, so maybe. The griffin turned to Rainbow. Was that a joke? Nope. Rainbow fluttered over to a bed and melted into it. Oh. The griffin cleared his throat. I'm going to make sure firefighters are on alert, just in case. That's probably wise. Good night. Twilight closed the door on him and shielded the room. She shuffled into the largest bed and fell asleep before her head hit the pillow. Asterisk. She was moving. Twilight knew that. Probably walking under her own power, which should have been impossible, but she knew better to dismiss the impossible. There was also a smell. A kind of smell that created a pseudo-magnetic field that drew her in, seeking it out. In a moment, a warm sensation filled her belly and spread throughout her nervous system. There was also the presence of feathers around her. She was hugging the small griffin that brought her coffee. You're welcome, he said, eyes darting around the room. Did you bring me the things on my list? Something in the back of Twilight's mind was taking care of the job of existing, because she was still at least 92.4% asleep. Not yet, but we're almost done. And your embassy wanted to see you. Oh. Okay. Twilight yawned and took the giant pot of coffee in her telekinetic grasp to accompany her mug. Ambrosia secured, she moved towards Trixie and Spike, giving them each a poke on the shoulder. Hey, guys! Time to wake up! Trixie groaned. Ugh! Still tired? Twilight downed another mug of coffee in one gulp. So am I. That's why there's caffeine. Come on! In a couple of minutes, the two zombies shambled to something resembling standing, and then the three were on their way. Trixie started her own cup of coffee. Why aren't Cloud and Dash coming? We're eventually going to the library to review documents related to advanced magic. Only you, me, and Spike are knowledgeable enough in this kind of stuff to really be able to add anything, so they're going to get some more rest. If there's time, us three can get a nap later. I'll try, Spike said through a fiery yawn. But most of what I know is from osmosis from being around you. Which should be good enough, hopefully. Twilight waved them towards their destination. First, though, the embassy wanted to see me. Hopefully that's just a pit stop. When they arrived at the embassy after going through twisting walkways in the branches, ponies were already waiting for her. The ambassador himself wasn't there, but given the obscenely early hour, that wasn't surprising. Instead, there was a security chief and a few subordinates. Lady Sparkle. The security chief was an old Pegasus mare with a stern look in her eye and a military uniform to back it up. My apologies for waking you, but there's a concern with your chariot, and we didn't want to risk opening it without you present. That got Twilight's head to tilt. The Catalpha? What's wrong with it? The chief opened her mouth to speak, but one of the ponies behind her was first. It's meowing. An assortment of scenarios ran through Twilight's head at light speed. Metamorphosis? No, that's too much. Griffin locked themselves in? Unlikely, they shouldn't be able to defeat the security wards so easily. Templar trick? Possible, but a simplifying razor split through the noise. Oh, I think I know what's going on. Take me to it. When they arrived, Twilight opened the door to confirm her suspicions, and was greeted with a Muruo from under one of the seats. Opening the little cubby, she pulled out the stowaway black fuzzball. Neutrino, you little booger. Neutrino, the chief asked. Yup. Spike gave the kitty cat some chin scratches. Princess Luna's cat. Or the night guard's. He's a troublemaker. Twilight gave the cat a hug to bother it. He's the stealthiest feline I've ever heard of. How he even got into the Catalpha, I have no idea. I'm afraid I can't watch over him, though, so I'm going to have to ask the embassy to watch him until Luna can pick him up. And I mean watch him. Constantly. If you don't, he will escape. The chief waved over one of the guards, who grabbed the fuzzball and gave him some pets, which was always a sure way to get Neutrino to melt into a puddle. Today was no different, and his purr only became louder when his jaw went slack. Sighing, the chief took off her beret. I'm very sorry to bother you for that, your ladyship. Twilight shrugged. It's fine. Just another stop on the way. Which direction is the library? A pair of griffins will arrive at the front gates in a short while to lead you there. We'll show you the way. The chief waved to one of the guards, who silently led her away. It was still an hour or so before dawn, which meant sunlight was extremely scarce, and cold still gripped the air. However, it also meant that fires had started in fireplaces throughout the city, filling nostrils with cooking smoke. Eventually that would mean the smell of rabbits and fish being roasted, though for now it was mercifully just wood. Before long, 2 griffins decked out in the colors of the Griffin's royal guard arrived. With no chariot or wings of her own, they were walking to the library, which suited her just fine. It gave her a little time to be a tourist and take in the sights and smells of a city unlike any other, and to drink more coffee. The library didn't turn out to be very far, and a little like her old home, it was one of the areas built directly into the side of a big tree. This library was larger, naturally, having been built into Yggdrasil. From what she understood, that also meant that it had to be rebuilt and changed from time to time. Yggdrasil was still alive and regrew what it lost. Though nowhere near as large or grand as the libraries in Manhattan or Canterlot, the Ares Library had them all beat in coziness by a long shot, with warm wood everywhere, ornate carvings and decorations, and artisan rugs rich ponies would fight a battle master for the opportunity to purchase. The aisles and ceilings were also surprisingly generous. Most important, though, was the free coffee and donuts in the corner of the mezzanine. Her nose pulled her on a beeline to the coffee, and as she charged her neurons with sweet caffeine, another smell hit her: brimstone. The coffee molecules in her nervous system did a dance line that hit her in the chest and forced her to scan her surroundings once more and finally acknowledge the elephant in the room. Or, rather, the dragon. A female dragon easily the size of the Catalpa, dressed in a white blouse that must have been custom-made for its size, was putting books and scrolls back on shelves, using some form of spell to handle the, relatively, tiny texts. Her scales were a mix of brown and burgundy, and her head sported a trio of horns pointed backwards. The dark dress on her lower half took a moment to recognize, as it blended well with her natural colors and oddly slender belly. Hey! Twilight sipped more coffee, fully acknowledging to herself that a spit take or mini freak out would likely be justified. Only problem with that would be the waste of actually fairly good coffee. You must be Lady Sparkle. The dragoness had a sultry, smoky voice. My name is Deep Index, and I hoard the knowledge in these walls on behalf of the king. You have been granted access by her order, and the documents you have requested are in meeting room 3, up the stairs and to the left. Oh. Twilight glugged more coffee. Alrighty then. Do I pay for the coffee, or? Deep Index smoked a chuckle through her nostrils. Even if we charged, I'd imagine diplomatic immunity would cover you. But I shall order extra, just for you and your team. The librarian shifted her gaze towards Spike. I had heard you've a drake in your entourage, but I did not expect one so young. I do hope you've learned to control your flame. Spike licked his knuckles, and they licked back with a green flame. I've been using it in spells for a long time now. Index eased her back and nodded. Very well. Should you require anything, please ask. I will be putting away yesterday's scrolls. Twilight refilled her drink and bowed her head a little. Thank you, Deep Index. We'll be upstairs. It wasn't until they were in their room and a privacy shield was in place that Trixie exhaled. Empty night. I didn't know there would be a dragon here, too. Twilight frowned as she sat down at the table. Neither did I. Spike cleared his throat. Well, on the plus side, she's really hot. The two mares gave him a look that translated into really. Hey, come on. I'm a dragon, too, you know. But I will admit, this seems a little sketchy. She knows magic and has access to whatever knowledge the Griffins have. Quite the coincidence. Twilight leaned back and stared at the piles of books and scrolls. I admit, I was just thinking the same. But I don't know if the king would just dangle the solution in front of our noses like that. She seems much more guarded than that. Can't ignore it, though. So, here's my plan. We'll comb through all this to get some possible leads, and then I'll take Cloud and Rainbow to follow them up. You two are going to stay here and keep researching, but keep an eye on that librarian. Spike rubbed his hands together. Don't have to tell me twice. Twilight sighed. Cool it, Casanova, she's 100 years too old for you. Also, she's probably too powerful for you two to take on without backup. Observe and report, that's all. Trixie pulled over a book. Stay out of danger and read. Got no problem with that. Asterisk. The morning was giving way to noon by the time Twilight left, list in bag. Cloud and Rainbow were waiting for her in the Catalpha back at the embassy, along with one Griffin visitor in a staring contest with Dash. Crap. Twilight puffed up her chest and strode in between Rainbow Dash and Princess Gilda. I'm happy to see you survived, Princess. I regret the circumstances in which we last met, however, I will always act to defend my friends. Always. Now, is there a problem? Yes. Gilda said through a closed beak, looking over her shoulder at the faded scar on her back. But also no. Much as I don't want to, I've been ordered to escort you on whatever it is you're doing. So let's get that done so I can go home. No. Twilight sat herself down to join the staring contest. Last time we met, you dislocated Dash's leg. I'm going to need more than your word if you think you're going to be following us around. Now, both of you, sit down and sort this nonsense out. Rainbow's ears went back. What, just like that? This isn't something that can be fixed in a single con. Of course not. Twilight clopped a forehoof on the floor. But we can resolve a chunk of it and stabilize things enough that I don't have to send her away and cause a diplomatic incident. Now, talk. Gilda opened her beak first. You were family. My family. Rainbow stepped back in surprise. Yeah, you said that. So why? And you rejected me for that pink annoyance. Twilight thrust a hoof between them. Her name is Pinkie Pie. She is a bit much, granted, but I ask that you show more respect for a bearer. A bit much isn't the problem. Gilda laid down, wings lax. In terms of Griffin body language, this was a signal of no hostile intent. My mom is a jerk, king or not. I wasn't good enough for her when I was young, so she sent me to be raised by couple after couple. Only good thing that came out of that was meeting Dash. The only good thing in my life, and she chooses that other pony over me. Cloud puffed out his chest. The way I heard it, you were pretty mean to Pinkie Pie. Gilda scratched the ground as she made a fist. Is it wrong to want to spend time with my best friend after I finally break free from that woman's talons? Why is it my fault the other bearer couldn't take a hint? Rainbow huffed. She was just trying to. Wait a minute. Twilight chewed her lip for a moment. I think this is. Yeah, okay. So, I'm no psychiatrist, but I do know that there are differences between how pony and griffin minds are set up. Griffins tend to have fewer friends in their social groups, but the bonds are very strong. Ponies tend to have more friends, and their bonds are also strong, but it's easier for us to form those bonds. Rainbow crossed her forelegs. Not a very good excuse. What, I'm supposed to just be okay with what she did? Twilight turned Rainbow to face her. No, you're supposed to use it to understand her. Look, what she did was wrong, but she was also going through a lot. You don't excuse it, you understand the reasons and use it to make amends and fix things. If for no other reason than I really don't want to rock the boat too hard right now. Also, given that she seems to have a grudge against her mother, having her here might just prove advantageous. Dash. Gilda lowered her head into a bow. I'm sorry. Rainbow winced. I don't know if I can accept. The pony you need to apologize to is Pinkie Pie. Twilight raised an eyebrow. You and I both know she'd accept it in the first half a heartbeat and conjure a cupcake out of the ether in the other. Rainbow sighed. Yeah, yes she would. I'm just, very uneasy about this. And that's okay. Twilight pulled out a piece of chocolate and offered it to Dash. Canterlot wasn't built in a day, and emotional wounds don't close after a few words and an apology. They require real work. This is just the first step, and I'd be delighted to help you to mend fences. Rainbow rubbed her foreleg, then took the chocolate and offered it to Gilda instead. Let's try again, okay? Gilda took the treat and pulled Rainbow into a hug. Thank you. Author's note. Where have I been? Long story short, work is kicking my butt all up and down the Great North. It takes a ton out of me. We'll try to do better. A blog post with more info will be coming soon, gotta head to work right now. Oh, and here's a new link to the Discord. Link in the description of this video. Hope you all enjoy, and thanks again for sticking with me. CV. End author's note. End of Shade in the Tree of Life.